Hi, Madison Marcus Pattison is my guest today and allowing me to interview her. She's a clinical social worker and therapist based in Farmington Hills, Michigan. Her career began by working in public schools in support of teachers, parents, and children. Eventually, she moved on to her own private practice titled Bright Spot Therapy, which I think is a great name. She uses a wide variety of methods to treat a wide variety of issues with adults, adolescents, and families. She's known for her practical, results oriented, and compassionate style. I want to congratulate you, Madison, for having your article published in Authority magazine titled Five Effective Strategies for Mental Well-Being. And thank you so much for spending a few minutes with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I have to make one correction. I don't
Okay.
own Bright Spot. I work for Bright Spot. I wish I could take the credit, but the owner of
Okay.
my practice has done such a brilliant job establishing Bright Spot. I'm just happy to be a part of it.
Well, I'm so glad you found a place to belong that you like and appreciate.
Yeah, thank you.
What first drew you to social work as a career?
Um, I I actually had no intention of becoming a therapist at all. I actually really loved working with children. And thought I would end up working in the school system. I had a lot of passions also about like toward writing. It kind of was a fluke. I was working actually as um, a lunch monitor, like a lunch lady, while I was in college. And I had two students that I had found out through the grapevine had really suffered a lot of trauma. And they were so resilient and just remarkable children. And I just felt like I want to be a part of something that empowers children that have suffered and been through the unspeakable to kind of get back to life. And so I went into forensic interviewing. I pursued my degree in social work to become a forensic interviewer. As you can imagine, working in child abuse and neglect long term, that can be really taxing, draining. And I found that I was more passionate about working in prevention instead of intervention. So then I went into the school system, wanting to work in the elementary school system, empowering children with the proper language for their bodies and safety and all of that. And then upon probably, I want to say 7 or 8 years into my career, I was just starting to become a little bit more hungry to broaden my skill set. And so I started working in for an agency doing therapy with children. And they asked me, would you be interested in working sometimes with adults? And I thought, I've never done that before, but never say never. And I started working with some adults and I really fell in love with it. And I developed a strong relationship with my supervisor at the time, who then ended up leaving to open up her own private practice, which then became Bright Spot. And that's how it all kind of came to fruition.
It sounds like a very organic evolution of interests
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
commitments.
Yeah.
Your article is about anxiety. What has been your personal experience with anxiety?
Mm. Well, the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree. I watched my mother struggle with anxiety, and I function very much as a perfectionist, which ended up being the clientele that I spent a lot of my time with, actually.
Uh-huh.
Like high achieving, high pressure. And so I have worked diligently to try to manage my own anxiety in terms of not always striving for perfectionism. I mean, striving for excellence is one thing, but trying to avoid pain, shame, blame through showing up a certain way. I've really worked on developing a lot of self-compassion and acceptance and acknowledgement of the fact that I'm a human being like everyone else. And I think that that has aided me in supporting my clients, knowing that they're not alone in just feeling the everyday pressures of trying to show up a certain way in the world.
It amazes me how pervasive perfectionism is in our
Mhm.
culture. Maybe just it's part of our human condition, but man,
Absolutely.
it does so much damage to us, doesn't it?
It really does. And it's one of the behaviors that are the most toxic, but the most rewarded. right? So many people use the word perfection to describe a characteristic of themselves that they're really proud of. Oh, I'm a perfectionist.
Yeah.
Or in an interview, what's your greatest weakness? People say, I'm a perfectionist. So it's like a weakness, but it's also this like badge of honor that people wear.
Yeah.
And so because it benefits other people when you show up perfectly or you meet their needs, even sometimes at your own expense, that can make it hard to shake off or even to have the desire to rid yourself of it. I think it takes a lot of self-awareness to recognize the costs of perfectionism, for sure.
I was in a really bad place in my life when I first began seeing a counselor and had the quality of perfectionism exposed in me. I
Mm-hmm.
was so afraid that if I dropped any of the many balls I was spinning, that somehow the world would come to an end. You
It
know,
feels like that, doesn't it?
it does.
Yeah, yeah. Were you able to work on some of that and kind of get a handle on it?
I actually began praying that I would see an opportunity to be imperfect without it hurting anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I was grocery shopping shortly after that, and I reached for a carton of blueberry yogurt, and it slipped out of my hand and just went splat all over the floor. You know,
Yeah.
and I stood there looking, and I thought, somebody in this store is paid to clean it up. It doesn't have to be me.
Mm-hmm.
And in the past, I would have gone groveling to the manager and apologized and give me a mop and let me clean it up.
Right.
I just walked away from it and thought somebody's going to tell someone that this is a mess and it needs
Yeah,
to
it
be,
happens.
but it doesn't have to be me.
Yeah.
I walked through the grocery store getting the rest of my groceries with this big Cheshire grin on my face. It was my first introduction to choosing to do something very imperfectly that didn't hurt anybody. And it
Yeah.
was so liberating. It was like that was my first step.
Right. Yeah. So when you're choosing to engage in imperfection, you're also practicing imperfection. You're practicing courage. You're practicing bravery, authenticity. So you're choosing something that really sounds like is more in terms of your values, more valuable than what the perfectionism has afforded you.
Well, you're exactly right. I was choosing a different value
Hmm.
where before the value was being perfect and expecting that everyone would love me more because I was perfect, which
Hmm.
doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
You mentioned sometimes suffering from ruminating thoughts. Would you define what that is?
Yeah, so rumination is just a really fancy word for getting yourself kind of caught in a thought spiral or just the worry shame storm where you kind of it's like one thought leads to the next thought leads to the next thought and then you look up and you're like, oh my gosh, it's been 45 minutes and I've achieved nothing. I often tell my clients worrying or rumination feels like sitting in a rocking chair, like it gives you something to do but you don't really get anywhere. So
Mhm.
that's what I would use to describe rumination.
Great, great illustration, sitting in a rocking chair, but you're not going anywhere.
Hmm.
Several times in the article, you mentioned the importance to you of being outdoors regularly. So,
Yeah.
what does being outdoors do for you emotionally?
Mm. Mm. That's such a hard question because I don't know where you're located, but I'm in Michigan right now in the middle of February or the end of February, and we've had a lot of cold, dreary weather. And so I've definitely noticed that's impacted my mood and my energy. And then the days where we have, the off 45-degree day with the sunny blue sky, it really, really just changes everything about how I embrace the day. When I'm able to get outside, I really feel like an intentional leaning into the breathing of the fresh air and taking in what we in therapy call ventral vagal glimmers, which are the opposite of triggers. So like really noticing and being present in like, wow, what a beautiful sunrise or what a beautiful skyline that I'm looking at. So breathing in the fresh air, I walk my dog as much as I can. I love skiing, getting outside. Skiing is like one of the things that can help me really turn my brain off. It's just me and my skis and the snow. So on the days where I can't get outside, I really do notice it takes a toll. So being outside is one of the grounding forces in my life in terms of managing stress and anxiety.
I think the beauty of nature really feeds our souls,
Oh,
might
for
be one
sure.
way of putting it. So tell us
Mhm.
about your dog.
I'm sorry.
Tell us about your dog.
Oh, how much time do you have? She is my pride and joy. I call her my dogter. I don't have children, so she really has served that purpose in my life. Her name is Penny. I adopted her from a shelter. A couple weeks after we unfortunately had to say goodbye to our beloved dog, Rocky. I wasn't intending on rescuing a dog so quickly after his passing, but I saw her picture on social media and I, for some reason, was just drawn to her, even though I come across pictures of dogs on social media all the time. I was like, I'm just going to go meet her. So I went to meet her, and then I was like, oh, I'm your mother now. So my husband was at work, and I called him, and I was like, where are you? I have to tell you something. And I think he thought I was going to tell him something completely different. And I drove down to his work, and I just showed him a picture, and I said, well, here's our dog now. Thank goodness the tables were turned because if it was the other way around, it would have not ended as well as it did. As long as he got to name her, he was happy. And over COVID, I actually spent a lot of time training her, and she can do everything from put her toys away to get you a tissue to scratching your back.
Wow.
She's very smart, and I soak up every moment that I can with her. Do you
What
have any pets?
I have had dogs most of my life, but right now I have two cats that I
Ah,
rescued.
yeah. Oh, I
Yeah,
love animals so much.
they mean a lot to me.
Mhm.
So, what kind of breed is she?
She's an American Staffordshire Terrier, so she's part of the pit bull family. We're really passionate pit bull owners in response in terms of like the responsibility that comes with owning that breed. She's all white,
Mhm.
and we
Wow.
like to say that I call her my angel because she came
Uh-huh.
right after Rocky, and we like to say that Rocky kind of sent her to us.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, I think our beloved animals stay with us forever, don't they? Our memories
For
of them.
sure. Hmm.
I was really touched by your empathy for public school teachers. How do you wish we did a better job in supporting them?
Oh my goodness. I think that, I mean, the easy answer is we need to compensate teachers better. I think
Yes.
that's just my knee-jerk reaction, but it's so much more complicated than that. I think that I wish I could give you like a picture perfect Jeopardy answer. But I think that at the end of the day, it really comes down to evaluating the expectations that we have of teachers and all of the responsibilities that we're placing on them to not just teach kids how to read and write. We're now expecting them to provide social and emotional learning. We're expecting them to sometimes be doctors and nurses and social workers, and at the same time manage, children that haven't had anything to eat yet. There's all of these behaviors that are happening in the classroom that are really distracting teachers from what they went to school for, which is I want to teach kids how to read and write. And we've placed this responsibility on teachers to kind of raise our children alongside their parents. And I just think that that's such an unfair expectation to have to do it all. And teachers are often told, I know I experienced this working in the school systems. You're often told, like, here's what we could be doing more of, more trainings, more curriculum, new curriculum. Like, congratulations, we have this new curriculum, but you finally mastered the curriculum that we gave you last year. So it's always how can you be doing more and better and providing all of the resources for your students. And it's very rare that teachers are being told you're doing enough, which to kind of bring this full circle, that kind of exacerbates this message of perfectionism and rewarding the teachers that are burning themselves out. I mean, teaching now has become a culture of like burning the candle at both ends. And that's the teacher that's celebrated as teacher of the year who ends up in therapy crying, saying, I feel like I can't leave. I feel like I have no other options. I'm so passionate about what I do, but I have nothing left for myself or my family at the end of the day.
Right.
So I don't know. That doesn't really answer your question. That's just my soapbox of we ask teachers to do so much more than any profession.
I have a niece who just retired from her teaching career, teaching junior high school in a relatively poor neighborhood,
Mhm.
and a largely Hispanic neighborhood. So the parents aren't able to help the children with homework very much, and they don't have a real high priority for reading or education. And my niece, what mostly burned her out was lack of support from the parents to maintaining discipline in the
Oh
classroom.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah,
it wore her out. She was,
absolutely.
she just kind of hung on by her fingernails until it was time for her to retire.
Yeah, and I think that that's a systemic problem too, right? People are having children now younger and with fewer resources than ever before. If you look back multiple generations, people were able to sustain a household on one income.
Right.
Now, it's rare that two parents are even together anymore, or that there is a present parent on both sides, mother and father, or two parents at all. And so we've got a lot of parents that are like, I'm just trying to survive. I'm
Yeah.
doing my best. And truly, they are doing their best. But then it falls, the responsibility of so much of that care falls onto the education system, and it's just taxed.
Well, I think many parents are taxed by anxiety, and teachers are taxed with anxiety, which brings us back to the whole topic of the article that you responded to, is
Mhm.
some ways to manage anxiety so that it doesn't dominate your life.
Mhm.
You mentioned your dog and being outdoors as much as you can. What other ways do you use to control or minimize anxiety in your life?
Yeah. I've really worked hard to be aware of how anxiety is manifesting in my body. I
Hmm.
don't know if you're familiar with polyvagal theory, but essentially, just in a nutshell, for anybody listening or reading, the understanding that your body is constantly taking in information from the environment and putting you into either a regulated or dysregulated state, and then your brain develops stories surrounding the messages that your body is getting from that the information in your environment. So I've become extra vigilant about noticing, okay, how is my body feeling right now? Is my heart racing? Am I tensing my muscles? How am I sitting? What is my facial expression, my body language? How is that showing up? And when I notice an elevation in those parts of my body, I do a lot of breath work, stretching. I practice yoga. I might mindfully sit down and drink a glass of water. I might say, you know what, I need to cancel my plans and kind of go into almost like a anti stimulation phase where I'm like, I need everything to be quiet. I'll turn the TV off, I'll turn the music off or take a shower. I I think I've really worked hard to try to put my body into a more regulated state, which is then translated to me being able to be a little bit more mindful of what's happening up here instead of it being on autopilot and I'm just kind of going through the motions and taking all of my thoughts at face value and putting stories out there that may have more to do with just how my body is responding.
I think most of us are really good at making up stories in our,
Uh-huh.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's not, oh my gosh, are they mad at me? It's like, have I eaten today? I'm a little bit jittery, you know?
Well, and the stories are not usually in our favor.
Of course.
I've
Yeah.
gotten really picky about noticing what activities give me joy and what activities drain my energy, what
Mhm.
people are pleasurable and what people drain my energy.
Yeah,
Because I
absolutely.
want to spend as much time taking in energy rather than letting it dissipate out of me.
Right. Yeah.
So, if viewers of this interview want to contact you, how would they do that?
They can go to our website, which is www.brightspоttherapy.com.
Mhm.
They can also find me on LinkedIn. They can find, we have a lot of different social media pages on Facebook, Instagram, they can also email me too. I'm open to that. My email is madisonmp@brightspottherapy.com.
Okay, thank you, Madison. It's such a pleasure to get to meet you face to face.
Likewise, thank you so much for your time and for having me. I appreciate it.
You are so welcome. I'll stop the